chair and also the chair of the membership and outreach committee from the World Fairies movement. So thank you for joining us. We will be wait just 1 more minute to see if Melina, if we have more people in the waiting room. If not, I can start telling you that from the membership and outreach committee, we are organizing this kind of webinars. This is our second webinar. The idea is try to share knowledge between our organizations and our movement and our people. So to share knowledge, to share information, to share the tools that we know. The way we can improve the work between us and within the WFMs to enrich ourselves and, of course, our organizations. Today's topic is how to write great concept notes with James Abutarach Williams. So thank you, James, for joining us today. James is professional manager and CEO. Meli, can you mute everyone, please? Thank you very much. So James is a professional manager and serves as CEO with leading NGOs like ActionAid, Oxfam, Lutheran World Relief, among others, providing leadership at national, regional, and international levels. He had lived and worked in India, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and South Sudan over the last 2 decades. He has brought in institutional stability to the NGOs that he worked for, both in terms of diversifying sources and promoting initiatives programs. His record in funding raising was while working in Afghanistan with Oxfam, when he raised along with the team about 10 million in 6 months. James has been passionate of peace, justice, and control arms issues. He was an NGO speaker at the UN conference on small arms and light weapons held at UN, New York in 2001, traveled to 54 countries, and has dozens of books to his credit. He served in the executive committee of WFM during 1995 and 2018, and is president of South Asian Federalists. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camila. Thank you for the introduction. But I am a simple person. What I have done is to bring institutional stability to NGOs where I worked in 2 ways, both in terms of strengthening systems and procedures and organizational development and fundraising. In every organization that I worked, I diversified the resources. Thanks to WFM, especially Amy, the executive director from Nairobi, is here, and also Camila, who is the head of the membership outreach committee from Argentina. So thank you all for participating. I think we are people from several continents, 4 continents here. I'm very grateful for WFM for giving me this opportunity. I want to address this group in 3 sections. I mean, first I mentioned this recipe. So I want to state what are the ingredients of this recipe. That is section 1. Then I'll tell you how to cook the recipe. Okay. Third aspect is how to eat. I don't want to say much. You all know how to eat. But some aspects like data management I will mention. And the last section would be, after having food, we are supposed to walk. So I'll walk along with you the journey that I have taken in fundraising. With that, I would like to begin. Camila, if you could unmute, it would be good, because this first section for 5-10 minutes would be a participatory session. I would like to ask you a basic question as to what for do you want to raise funds? Why raise funds? That is my question. I think 2 or 3 people could answer. Actually, we have to unmute Camilla. Any?
Well, I think raising funds is important for implementing activities if you want to actually have social impact. So to actually have impact, you need to raise funds for activities.
Anybody else? I think we have to unmute others.
John.
Yeah, thank you for the question, James. So I'm coming to the conclusion that the World Federalist Movement went through a theory of change process that determined a vision and a mission for the organization and steps we want to take to achieve that. And I feel it's our duty as the board of the organization appointed by Congress to maximize our capacity to implement that theory of change that we've been instructed to implement. So I'm seeing fundraising as a capacity maximizing activity. Without funds, we'll have little impact. With funds, there's no limit to what we can achieve.
Okay, thank you, John. Camilla, as they raise their hand, you are unmuting them, right? Is that true?
Yes, hi, Andrew here from Australia.
Okay.
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, basically raising funds is so that other people can see that we are important in some way, shape or form, that we have a bit of a clout. Personally, I'm into alternative currencies like Let's Barter and negative interest money. So not all of them require a government to issue them. As a community, we could issue our own negative interest money, but it also works best in that case if you have a project you can point to. So raising money is raising national dollars is what I think you're talking about.
Okay. Anybody else? Actually, the concept note is basically to convey your idea or the cause you're addressing. And we have to be really sure, why do you want to keep on raising more and more funds? There are organizations who would like to enlarge the portfolio every year. And sometimes, the quality of the programming suffers if you have too much of budget and projects. So you can, at a point of time, in my opinion, handle at least 3 projects for 3 to 5 years and smaller projects of 5 up to 1 or 2 years. If there are no further questions, I will give you the answer. John and others who said about activity, capacity, maximization, meeting national goals, all these answers are correct. And the most important answer is that the people should be the focus when we think of developing a concept. You have to keep the people in mind. In the sense, what is affecting the people? What situation are we planning to change? What policies that we want to change that affect the people? So people should be the focus of what we are doing. I mean, even if you're talking about addressing climate change, which in turn affects the environment, it does affect the people. Now I'll try to share the screen.
James, do you need help? Yeah. Do you need I share the screen or something?
Share the screen. Yeah. You can all see this here?
Yes. Naina, please mute yourself. Thank you.
So at the end of every slide, I would like to give an example. Because when I mentioned people should be the focus, I'm giving an example of a project which I have in mind. So currently there is low percentage of women participating in elections in Sri Lanka. So that is a problem that we are addressing. That is the issue. And one has to be passionate about any problem. I mean, I have been on board, several boards of donors committing funds for the projects, where I have seen that most of the project proposals would be the same. There won't be anything different. You know, unless you are committed to the issue at hand, you won't develop innovative projects. And also the problem solving should be professional and you have to be realistic. There are some people who would say, we want to promote social change. I mean, it's too big. You have to narrow down, you have to be realistic. And you also have to be confident that you can address and resolve the problem. If you are not confident, then you cannot convince the donor how to address and resolve the problem. And also your arguments for change should be based on evidence-based research. Research, database, and also baseline. Because if you say that 5% of women are participating in an election, then only after 5 years or let's say 3 years, you can see what is the percentage now and whether our work has contributed to that. So data is absolutely important, baseline. First, analyze the problem. And one has to keep asking the questions, why, until you go to the root cause of the problem. I once got a project proposal note for deepening something like 10 irrigation wells in a particular area. Then I went into it. I mean, that was the objective, deepening of 10 irrigation wells. When we kept asking questions, we realized that there are about 40 wells in the same area. But mind you, the water table is the same, 10 to 15 feet or 20 to 50 feet or whatever it is. So if you deepen only 10 wells, what would happen is the water in the other wells, 40 wells will go down. You have to again deepen the other wells. So the root cause in this is, the water level is low. So we have to have an objective of augmenting water resources. And the intervention should be rainwater harvesting and micro watershed management. Once the water level is equal, then automatically the wells will get water. So we need to go to the root causes of the problem, not the symptoms of the problem. And also, who are the stakeholders? What is their interest? I once did a desilting of a tank. Least did I realize that the land belonged to just one big farmer or the landlord in the village. So we have to ask the question to whom the land belongs when people submit their proposal. And what are the policy implications? To me, policy is very important. Any problem that you are addressing has a policy implication. Many times we as NGOs are working because there is no policy, or there should have been a policy which is defective or malfunctioning. We need to address this issue. And we need to provide research-based data. I have given an example that only 5% of elected women are in the parliament, Sri Lankan parliament today. And I think we should go to the next stage of why only 5%. Because if you look at Sri Lanka, by all indicators, human development indicators, it has the highest HT, human development indicator in South Asia. Literacy is 98%. Access to health and other services are extremely good. But the research found out that women don't participate or even stand in the election because there is gun violence during the election. So, see here, if you keep asking the questions, why, you go to the root cause of the problem. And then you also have to do a kind of linkage. What is the problem? What is the goal? What is the objective? What is the activity that you have? there should be a systematic linkage to every aspect of it. I mean, after this first section, I will show you in the second slide, the logical linkage between various items. We need to give a suitable title for the concept note. Mind you, the concept note is only 1.5 pages because nobody these days wants to read more than 1.5 pages. Okay. But you have to work for a 10-page document and then summarize it in 1.5 pages. Don't think that straight away you can write 1.5 pages. You have to write 10 pages and then summarize it in 1.5 pages. So the title of the project we are talking about is to enhance the participation of women in the electoral process in Sri Lanka. In local level, provincial level, and parliament. The problem is currently only 5 women are participating. The goal is to enhance the participation of women in all democratic processes. Objective 1 is very important because unless you reduce the violence during elections, women are not going to participate because this is the root cause that you have identified. And then only you do parallelly increase the number of women to participate. Even enabling them to stand in the election itself is a big thing. And also there could be also a third objective, advocacy with the government to have a percentage. I mean, I think in this region, South Asia, Afghanistan is the first one to have 50% of women in the parliament. They had a provision that only 50% of the parliament should be members from the women. And then what activities? So the activity first is to address the reducing violence during elections. We are an organization called the PAFEL, People's Association for Free and Fair Elections. So they had a campaign, ballots, not bullets. So they advocated for democracy strengthening. And in every village, they have outreach. So they did ballots, not bullets. See, the project that I'm presenting to you is a real one, and it happened in Sri Lanka. Now there is marginal increase of women's participation in politics. Not much, at least marginal. And then we also need awareness in the villages through several NGOs. Because some of these things, we can't do it alone. We cannot say this is our project, only we will do it. We have to join hands with others. It should be a common project implemented by several others. And we can also have television sets where we can propagate this message. Concept note. What are the interventions? So given this problem, what approach we take to solve this problem? And then mind you, see, you are not the first one to do this. Already some people might be engaged in this democratic strengthening process. So find out, first do a kind of a study of NGOs who are already working in this area. I mean, it doesn't matter if 15 people are working, you are the 16th person, it doesn't matter. But you need to find out what are the gaps in the intervention. Because the donor is interested in seeing, okay, given the problem, these are the interventions this NGO is suggesting. Did the NGO analyze who are the others working and what they are doing? They should know, and the gaps. And then you should also state your claim as to why you think you are best suited to address this. Why not others? And what is the add value for your organization? And then frame it in such a way that the project looks very innovative. And then clearly state what change you want to see. In the concept paper, you have to write it. So given this problem, these are the interventions. This is the change I want to see through the project. And the deliverables, expected results, outputs, and also you should state how you are going to measure them, because several times people write all this for the log frame. And in the organizational structure, they don't know who will measure it. Only an evaluator will go and talk to them and interview them. But in the initial stage itself, we should determine who will measure those indicators and report. And a summary of the budget should be there, just about, quarter page of the concept paper should be about the budget, just the main entity. And then in this particular project, you need to join with other stakeholders. There is an election monitoring agency in Sri Lanka, there's election commission, there are women groups. Because if you are looking at a larger problem like this, you can't do it alone. You have to join hands. Similarly, on environment and other issues also, you have to join with others. You can't do it alone. You don't want to say that I am the only one doing it. It is not the pride of your NGO. If you are really interested in solving the problem, you have to join in others. Some people may join, some may not join. Whoever joins, we should take a lead and go ahead with it. What change you want to see? You need to be very clear and practical about it. Explain the rationale, what change you are making. Do a stakeholder mapping who are all related to this problem and link all the elements in a change process. Have a logic to what you are trying to address. And donors should be able to clearly see how the situation would change and what deliverables are visible. Be passionate about the change you want to see. You need to demonstrate in the concept note. If it is a very serious, see, that's why I don't like to give it to consultants to do the project proposal, because consultants work for the money. They don't work for our organization. They do not know our organization. They do not know what our vision and mission is. And they are not passionate about the work we do, but you and I are passionate. So it's better that you write, and maybe you can ask the consultant to shape it later. And then relate priorities to the donors. I always do that. Once we see, first of all, you put your issue on the paper, and then you look at the donors. See, let me tell you an honest confession. Never have I ever failed in any of my fundraising. Because once you are convinced that a situation has to be changed and convince all those people who are involved in it, then if you submit a proposal to a donor and convince him, you can definitely get the money. Look, do a donor mapping. Look at the websites. If you think that APLW, Asia Pacific Law and Development in Chiang Mai, Thailand, is the agency which looks at women's participation in politics, apply to them. So like that, the donors have the priority. You cannot apply to a donor without your priority. What you consider as priority is also their priority. Okay, the last slide in this section. Which donor would be interested and who is interested in long-term livelihood development? I mean for several issues, according to the issue, you can find out which donor would be. I have already mentioned this before. You write 4 or 5 or more pages and condense the section concept paper to one. So I have given you the ingredients for the recipe. Now I will go to the next section. Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
No yet.
No, sir.
James, I think I'd suggest you to stop sharing and then reshare again so that it appears on the screen.
First, I should say share the screen. Is it? Oh, yeah, I got it. Sorry.
Your screen is not visible, sir.
Yeah. Now?
Now, yes. Just wait a second. I think, yes.
Yeah, it now
it's
appears.
okay. Now it's okay.
Okay, so
Now it is.
I call it as a guide for effective NGO programming, but you could also use it as for the concept paper for one single project. See, there are many problems in this world which NGOs are tackling, which are not solved. The simple answer is that it is not watertight like this. For example, if you look at the situation of bonded labor, there are many people who are bonded labor in many countries in the world. I mean, modern slavery. We have not been able to abolish it. So in this systematic linkages between various elements, if you put any problem, you can try to see how you reach the end of the road. In this chart, I have given both input and output. The throughput is very important. In the log frame and all that, you normally see the input and output. You don't see the throughput. The reason why I'm talking about throughput, it is the organization. What is your organization structure? Given this project, how are you going to implement it? Do you have human resources within the organization? And if not, are you going to recruit them? How many of them? And then again, finance. And then, I mean, everything has to be budgeted properly. And then there should be a monitoring every month, both by program staff and the finance staff. Many a times, only the finance staff look at monitoring of the program. To me, underspending and overspending both are a problem. In my work, I never return money to any donor because 3 months before the project ends, or even 6 months before, I like to see where we are and then try to spend the money, because otherwise we have to return the money to the donor, which is wrong. And then do the systems and procedures support this project and what are the tools. And then, if you look at the linkages, first I'm underlying the baseline and the data, research data, evidence-based research. So this is linked to the goal, and that should be systematic linkages. So like this, several one, each of the objectives should be linked with the sub-objectives and with each activity intervention. And the results or the outputs, deliverables, has to be clearly stated, whether it is on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or annual basis. In the last section, I mentioned intended and unintended consequences. I think this is very important. Sometimes you may expect a particular result, which may come totally unexpected. For example, in the case of tuition classes, in India, once I decided when I was country director for ActionAid that we should support supplementary education or tuition classes for the first generation learners, because when the children go home, the parents are not educated, so they cannot train them. So in the 132 villages, we did that. And the children were passing in the examination better than before. One day I went for a field visit. In the playground, I saw 2 groups of children playing. Then I asked the teacher, he said, well, this group of children attend our supplementary education. That group of children don't attend our supplementary education. I said, what is the reason? Because there was a stigma attached to the people who are vulnerable or from a different socio-economic lower status of the society. Only they were invited to attend the class. So therefore, the other section boycotted. Then we said we did a big mistake in our professional work. So then we said, let's open up the whole supplementary education tuition center to all the children. But of course, you know that only the poor children who would come to our classes, because the rich children would have their own tuition masters. So the stigma attached is very important. So that's why I'm saying unintended consequences have to be checked now and then. And then the feedback is very important. When you do a monitoring, because there are M&E staff in your organization who will do monitoring, it's very important that they give you constant feedback. Sometimes if the activity is not realistic, you have to change the activity. I remember in agriculture, somebody was planting banana plantation. Least they realize there is not adequate water for banana plantation. So you have to change the activity. Similarly, you have to add more staff or bring in more systems and procedures. Sometimes in organizations, we blame the individual in evaluation, that it is because of individual A, this project is problem. But actually, the individual has not been oriented to the organization or oriented to what the deliverables are. I mean, the induction of a person in an organization should be there at least for a week so that he clearly understands what project he is implementing. So we need to review the systems and procedures by the M&E. And also, is it related to the strategy or where it is taking us to the strategy? Because If you're a country program, your country strategy is related to the global strategy. You have to see the linkages. Okay. Now I'll stop sharing the screen and Camilla will moderate before we go to the next session. I have done the recipe, I have done the cooking. Now, Camilla.
Okay, so now the idea is to do questions to James, if you have. I imagine you do. So we open the floor to do that. You can raise your hand on the screen, and we will start with that. I can see that Rebecca made a comment on the chat saying, in addition to mapping stakeholders, also recommend mapping spoilers. So
yeah, right. Yeah, stakeholders are both who support and both who oppose, we call it field analysis. So all should be included, you're right. Any other questions in the chat?
James, you mentioned about the log framework. Would you happen to have a template of what that would look like?
It's very similar to what I showed you, except the problem, because most donors suggest their own log frame.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, most log frames I have seen do not have the problem analysis. It only starts with the goal, objectives, and all that. That is why I have consciously given the problem analysis. Mm-hmm. Because to me, problem analysis and baseline are absolutely important when you do the log frame. But I can share with you privately some template for the log frame. Yeah.
Okay. That would be helpful. This was really informative, and I know personally you've helped me a lot when we were developing some concept notes. So this is really helpful, and I'm glad some of our members can benefit from this information as well.
Yeah, but this chart I gave you, see, most of the projects are evolved from kitchen room analysis. Mm-hmm. In the kitchen, after you have a cup of coffee, how do you analyze? So if you keep a lot of papers with you and analyze what project you are going to build up, and then use this chart. The nuts and bolts of a project is this chart which I have given you. Yeah.
So I have a question. When you're doing your analysis, how do you decide then that this is the project that we should go with? What are some kind of indicators that you should look for when deciding a project?
Yeah, to me, a problem analysis, you should do a kind of a brainstorming with your team. I tell you, all this fundraising and all that, we can't do it alone. You have to have a team. And even if you write a wonderful concept paper, you have to ask somebody to check it. So in the team, you do a kind of brainstorming and ask questions, why? And then you will come to the bottom of it. And then you can see, for example, in the example I gave you, in Sri Lanka, there are different elections, local panchayat elections, provincial election, and parliament election. You need to track how many years, once in 3 years, provincial, parliament is 5 years. And then you can also put the baseline data, last election, how many women candidates were there and how many were successful. Like that, you build up the data. So therefore, that is very important. Yeah.
I would also be curious to know about monitoring and evaluation. So is that just done at the end, or should it be undertaken throughout all the steps that you mentioned?
Right from the beginning, the M&E staff are with you in the organization. And when you write a project like this, project proposal like this, you have to indicate which are the indicators which you can measure at the end of every month, at the end of every quarter. Maybe I can give an example from the NGO experience. For example, we are looking at a mobile clinic. And the mobile clinic has a kind of registration book in which people register. In your deliverables, you would say that 40% of the women would be covered in this village. So from the admission record, you can find out whether 40% of the population have covered or not, and then you find out why. And then there are health workers who can go to the village, convince them to come. So therefore, each of these indicators, some of them are monthly and quarterly means, you can also check that how many referral cases are there in the health clinic. And in and then in certain cases like that, anybody else, I can move on to the cooking. I'm still cooking actually. The food is not ready.
I'm sorry. Everyone could hear James at the end, or should he repeat something?
Yeah, it was breaking.
Oh,
Okay, James, yeah. Can you repeat?
Yeah. I said I'm still cooking. I have not finished the meal according to the recipe. Is it clear now? Okay.
It is, but before that you said something, but that's okay. I mean, we could move on.
Yeah, I said I'm still cooking. I have not finished the cooking. So that's a saying that not all the eggs in one basket. If you're running an NGO, diversify. I mean, recently, you know the situation in India. I mean, I know it is also true with Bangladesh and even Pakistan, where the government banned some organizations, I don't want to say which one is that, from receiving foreign funds. But some of these organizations had a mechanism right from the beginning that at least 5%, 10% would be local fundraising. Now I know of organizations where I am part of, where now 100% of the funding which they were getting from abroad are now addressed by local fundraising efforts. Even if you're getting from the UN or institutional donors, you still have to have another mechanism. There are foundations. So like that, at least have 4 or 5 different varieties of, because you never know, suddenly funds of the foundation may dry up or UN will not have money. For example, now UNDP is closing in many countries now because of lack of funds. So therefore, we cannot depend on one source of funding. And then I mentioned to you, it's a team. It's not your own fundraising team. I know that in several organizations, there is no fundraising team. But what is important is that you need to have people who are involved in program, communication, grant management, M&E, all these people, and the web designer, all these people should be part of your team. So when you do brainstorming, all of these people should be there. Because actually fundraising is a communication tool, basically. And also it's a grant management because the follow-up of funding is very important, reporting, and whether you are reporting according to the deliverables that you are committed to the donor is absolutely important. And your website should get updated. In fact, I have rejected proposals where I have gone into the NGO's website, which has not been updated for 3 months. Then I said, this organization is not a vibrant organization. Every week you can report on something. You can ask somebody to write a blog. It should be a vibrant organization. If you're not a vibrant organization and a sleepy organization, nobody would fund you. And a lot of stories come from the field. And I remember once I was, when I was country director for Action Aid in India, I was visiting a village where I found a well, an irrigation well, which was donated by a donor in France. So I took a picture and immediately sent to that the money for which you donate, for the well for which you donated the money is still working and the water level is this. And so many farmers are benefited. These are the types of crops that were grown. He was very happy. He wanted to donate 5 more irrigation wells like that. So therefore, report, all the time report. See, getting a donor is very difficult, I tell you. And also in fundraising, we know that the success of fundraising is only 2 or 3% if you spend money in direct mail. But once you get a donor, you have to nurture a donor. You have to keep reporting. I remember once I was involved in a sponsorship program of children, and the government of the day said that that particular NGO for whom we are supporting cannot receive funds. But we need to be honest about it. We have to tell the donor. I mean, about 15,000 people were behind that project. So some in the team said, no, don't tell them. I mean, they won't matter because the money, $20 going from their account, it doesn't matter for them. So we said, no, we need to be honest and truthful. So we told the donor that, this project is getting closed because of this reason. But we give you the option. If you want to donate to some other child in some other village, you can. Mind you, out of 15,000, 12,000 actually said they will support another child. And some of them still sent the money because $20 going from the account, they didn't really realize that they need to stop it. Oh, okay. Now the cooking part is almost over. Now I want to take a walk with you after you have had the meal. So the recipe is over. I have given you the ingredients. I told you how to cook, and also now to walk with you my journey in fundraising. When I was 21 years back, I was appointed as a country director. So that time when I go for meetings, people come behind me and say, James, can you give me some funds? That's the worst statement I want to hear. It's not that I am your friend that I will give you money. You need to say that you're passionate about something. So I stopped carrying visiting cards to meetings because I don't want to give it to people and then they'll say, James, give me money. No. First, you should be passionate about what you're doing. And one important thing when I am walking the journey is to understand the policy implications of what we are doing. See, mind you, if there is a problem, there is a social policy solution to it. It is not just a micro project that you're talking about. We always say, think globally, but act locally. So what is the local ramification of that problem? If it is a climate change, you can see the ramification in the village. So we need to link it to the problem, policy implication. So to me, there are three elements of a social policy: reform, welfare, and long-term development. In reform, maybe it is a structural reform that we need to bring about. In many villages in India and Bangladesh, 10% of people own 90% of the land. And another 5% may own another 5%. So most of them are landless poor. So in that kind of situation, if you have an objective that we want to improve the status of the vulnerable community in a village, even if you're doing a tuition class or a best school or a best hospital for 1,000 years, you can't change the situation because it's a structural problem of land ownership. People who don't have access to assets, don't have access to schools, and they don't have facilities to reach. I mean, even though facilities may be there, they cannot access those facilities. So then what do you do? So your motive should be land reform or advocate for government to implement land reforms or into various income generation program and enable them to buy back the same asset that they lost, because many landless people actually have lost the land over a period of time because of religious festivals. They have to borrow loans from the landlord. And after 5 years, if they're not able to repay, then the landlord would say, you give me back the land. I want to take over the land because the document is with me. So structural reforms are very important. So you need to find out the problem, what it is related to. Welfare would be immediate relief, because during situations like this train accident in India or the cyclone is waiting to come to Gujarat, so immediate relief has to be done. And it has to be linked up with long-term livelihood. In a kind of a linkage, reform, welfare, and long-term development have to be linked together. I'll give you an example from Afghanistan. There was severe drought in 2011, and we applied to so many donors. Nobody was Nobody was willing to fund. Even the foreign ministry, which normally helps for emergency, said no. They said rot is chronic, so we cannot help. It's not an emergency. Every year it comes. And then they also said something very interesting. It is the fault of the NGOs not to address this issue that rot is coming every year. And then what we did was, in Oxford, we always publish messages or articles in Washington and London. We did that to attract donors to support. I got a call from the minister in Kabul saying that, James, you come and meet me. How can you do this? Everybody will think that the government of Afghanistan is not supporting its own people. So I frankly apologized and I said, sir, next time I will consult the concerned department before I release anything. And then he also mentioned NGOs should do something about the problem. Then I came back, our team started thinking about it. Then we said, why not we think about micro watershed management? And then we had an OSAID representative who said she will support us with a project, long-term livelihood support for 5 years with $8 million. And we did a wonderful project with that money. So we need to find the root causes of the problem. And one understanding leads to another. And also, I want to tell you that the donors also a budget line. See, for example, donors would say they want to support NGOs on demand development. They want to support NGOs on advocacy. Like that, they have 10% for this, 5% for that. So at the end, before the year ends, they would like to see that their budget line is addressing the 5% or 10%. But you need to get that information. You need to have meet the friends of the donors, either in a bar or tea shop or whatever it is, coffee shop, and then find out that whether donors do have money to unutilized money. Normally with USAID, around November, they will bother us. Can you take more money because we have money to spend? We have not spent. We don't want to return because if we return now, our next year quota will go down. So we will seize that opportunity. And then again in UN, also there are funds we are marked, which we have to find. Once I had a very difficult situation when, 1.5 years back when Taliban took over on October 15th, the flights could not come. And we had a European Union and many European donors wanting to donate medicines to Afghanistan, but the flights could not arrive. And if we take it through Karachi, many life-saving medicines will be wasted. So what to do? So we discussed with our WHO counterparts and then pleaded with them for emergency medicine. So because WHO through UN OCHA can give you special funds. So you need to be in knowledge of where to access these funds. And the last aspect in this walking through journey of my fundraising is seizing the opportunity. Some of my colleagues used to say when there are floods or disaster, we are very happy because we can raise more funds. But I'm sorry, that's not the way to look at it. But you should seize the opportunity otherwise. Because, I'll tell you one simple example. We had NGO directors had a meeting with UN, head of UN in Afghanistan. He mentioned that people are on the move from Pakistan across the border in the host province. And many of them are women and children. There are 5,000 of them. They need urgent medical help. And I'm very happy that MSF has volunteered to take care of it. But as you know, MSF has mandate only for 6 months, but I want somebody to follow up. So I thought this is a great opportunity. I didn't commit to the UN chief because without my organizational agreement, I cannot. So I came outside, called my desk officer in Berlin. He said, go ahead, you can meet the embassy. I went to the embassy and met the project officer. And I told him, this is the problem. You will have to support us. Because the lives of people are at stake, we have to save lives. That is the passionate plea I gave. He said, okay, send me the proposal. I tell you, that is a record. In 1 week, we developed a concept note. Based on that, $300 million were given. And then I went to MSF. They said, don't worry, you don't need to restart the project. We'll give you all the equipment that we have. And you can also take all the staff that we have, you can give them a new contract. I'm glad to inform you that project which was started in 2015 is continuing even today. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Germany, is so kind enough to support. So you should seize the opportunity. That's very important. And then another opportunity I would tell you, I mean, many of us are working in conflict zones, and we are all doing sometimes band-aid jobs. After a conflict has occurred, we go and provide relief. But some of us are thinking how to prevent it, how to prevent conflict, because the tap is open. The supply of arms and ammunition are always there. We have to close the tap. And there is not a single legally binding instrument in the UN to stop this or have regulations around export control. So there was an opportunity that the UN conference on small arms was coming up for the first time in the UN in 2001. Mind you, till that time, 90% of the global arms sales were done by the members of the Security Council. So why would they be interested in bringing a legally binding instrument? So, I mean, my colleagues, because we have 5 offices in South Asia, and we have another office in Canada. And my colleague Farooq, he was also brooding how to raise money. I mean, my friend Farooq normally goes to bar, and he loves being there every day almost. And he makes communication with people around the bar. And one day he spoke to somebody that is a problem we want to address. And that fellow happened to be the joint secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then he said, if you submit a good proposal, I'll give you $500,000. Sorry, $500,000. $500,000 he gave. Yeah. So, and that time, Lloyd Axworthy was the foreign minister. After the landmine treaty, he took up on small arms control. And so we mobilized funds. And then we had a small arms network, because to have a project like this, you have a large network. We thought we cannot do it as South Asia Partnership alone. So we joined with 200 groups within South Asia, and we called it South Asia Small Arms Network. And we were able to give flight tickets to 40 people to come to the conference. See, you pay for several times, you know, when you do raise funds, it's not your NGO alone should benefit. You should also include others. And also you should find opportunity to convey your message to people to seek funds. Once I was sitting in the business class seat from Bombay to Bangalore, and normally everybody is quiet at the business class. So I thought, let me talk to the person next to me, and he was watching a nice movie from Netflix. So when we began the conversation, I realized he's a big industrialist. So I asked him, see, can you support children and child rights issues? He said, yes. I was not working in India at that time. I referred him to another NGO which is working in on child rights. So that NGO is now accessing aid from him. So wherever you get opportunity, and also you should have a prepared speech for 5 minutes. Suppose you are going in a lift and you meet some donors. How do you express yourself? You cannot tell him, I am James Arpudraj, I come from India, I did this, I did that. He is not interested in listening to all that. You have to tell him, see, there are people dying in a village. The infant mortality is very low in this place. Unless people like you help, we cannot solve this problem. Bring the problem first. So you prepare your 5-minute speech or 3-minute speech in a lift, which is very important. And sometimes you get unexpected support. Once in Kabul, USAID has given us enough funds for product development, carpentry, workshops we were supporting with R&D and microfinance. So we said we need to exhibit that products in an exhibition. So I mean, people are thinking I am mad having an exhibition in Kabul during conflict. We said we'll go ahead, and we also had children's spaces, food court, and everything organized, and everything went on well for 3 days. During that time, we told the USA that we are also trying to mobilize local funds, because then only the project will be sustainable. The reason was, once the US withdraws, then what happens? So we tried to speak to the banks. 2 banks came forward to support with money. And USA said, sorry, you can't receive local funds, because even if you want that money, we will give it to you. And we told them, sorry, no, we want to do it because there should be a sustainability. So after the project closed, that those banks were continued to support such kind of exhibitions in Kabul. So therefore, you get support from unexpected area. And during that exhibition, we didn't have only furniture. We also had paintings, handicrafts, carpets, and everything. So we were walking through and we found a painting, and it is still there with me. The guy he sold it for $20. I bought it quickly and I told him, don't ever sell a painting for $20. It's too cheap. Then I went into the background. They're all students, because when you realize Taliban did not like music and paintings. So I told them, please tell your other students to do a lot of paintings. And after 6 months, you tell me if you're ready. So then I tied up with a local restaurant called Namaste. And then I told the restaurant, can you give you a space free? And then I invited all the embassies. And I told these guys, your lowest price should be
James, you're breaking.
So you should find out. Yes?
You're breaking a little bit.
Okay. So all
we have 2 more questions on the chat. I do have 1 more. We are running out of time.
Okay.
Can I go with the question?
So you are going to close in 1 hour or what? I have 2 more points to finish, and then we go to the question. Then in Sri Lanka, we thought about this idea of peace building during the conflict. And then because people are looking at track 1 and track 2, and we want to look at track 3, community-based peace building. And we wanted to form women's groups in nonviolent communication, human rights. We want to train them, and any problem they want to solve in the village, and tell the actors that they don't, even if they have guns, they are not supposed to use the gun in the village. So that kind of a peace and reconciliation committees we formed in 100 villages. So for that, we raised funds from CARD8, because CARD8 supports peace building. So it's very important to seize the opportunity and do something innovative. So this is my journey. Well, one more point is that during the SAARC summit, we said like Europe, when they have and mind you, so many donors and NGOs participated in the people. So it is just think out of the box, something different. So this is my journey in fundraising, and I end here, Chairman Camilla.
Okay, we have 1 question in the chat asking how important is to add a visual aid to the concept note.
I'm sorry, say it again.
How important it is to add a visual aid to the concept note. It is important to add a visual aid, so to have visual features on the concept note. I think it is that.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to get you. V4?
Is Melina asking that question? And we have
visual aids.
Melina, can you explain the question?
Thank you, Naina. It is important to add.
Who is that? Who asked the question? Or they can put it in the chat box. I can go through it and see.
it is already on the chat. Visual aid. Can you say it, Naina? And we also, did you understand, James, or not?
Yeah, I'm looking through. I'm not able to get that. Visual aid, okay. Add your visual aid to the concept. No. I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe you can give a picture. I do not know. You can have a picture if you can, but still it should not be more than 2 pages. If you want to have a visual impact, it's always good. Okay, thank you. Next one.
Okay, I think yes. This one I think is interesting. You mentioned budgeting and reporting. What do you do when you are under budget for a line item and need to balance using the rest of the allocate fund and not misappropriating funds? Is there a protocol for this?
Yeah, no, actually, most donors agree. There is always what is called as midterm review in the project. During that time, you can always explain to the donor that, this is not required. So that we want to allocate this to something like that. And there are donors like UN who say that up to 10% you can spend more in each budget line, like that. Some donors have stipulations. Yeah. So you can always talk to the donor. Be frank and honest about it.
I have another question. It's in between when you present the concept note and the stakeholders. So sometimes you present a concept note and then get rejected, but you do not have any feedback. How do you know how to improve your concept note, or how do you know what you have to do, what you have to change?
Well, it's important to know the donor well. And if you're in the same city, try to find out where the donor representative goes for lunch or to the bar or restaurant. Follow him. Sometimes, unless we know a person in a donor agency, we don't submit concept paper. Or I will send it to him first. Just look at this concept note before I formally submit it. And some donors have an obligation actually to tell you what is wrong in the proposal. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, James, we are on time, I think. Do you like to add something else?
No.
Okay.
My last thing is, if you have a good idea and if you are passionate about it, and if you are confident that you can solve it through a kind of a project mode, giving very clearly the implications to policy and what picture you are going to change ultimately. I don't think any donor is a fool not to accept your proposal. In my experience, the success rate is almost 80%. And, when I joined Oxfam, my director general told me, James, we give you $5 million basically $3 million, yeah. $3 million basically for office rental, staff salaries and all that. If you don't raise 10 million, you're out. So with the team, it's not me. With the team, we raised $10 million to keep the job. So we are in non-profit. Non-profit doesn't mean loss. Non-profit have to be profitable for the poor. We need to have good professional projects, well-integrated projects, which we can serve the poor. That's my closing remark.
Excellent. Thank you, James, for participating on this webinar. I think we reached to the end. Maybe we're gonna do a second round on the second part of the year. We'll see. It was very interesting to listen to you, of course, and these very useful tips that you gave to us and advices on how to write great concept notes. So I made my notes already. Thank you to everybody to participate on this. please follow us on our social media. We'll be doing another workshop very soon. So thank you to everybody and keep
And join as members of WFM, because WFM is an organization which creates global institutions to address peace issues. So WFM created International Criminal Court.
exactly, and you can find our social media
Therefore,
on the
you
chat.
can become members of WFM. Yeah. So thank you, Camila and Marina, Amy, and many others.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Good office.